Hi everyone! It has been a very long time since I have made a video, and honestly I don't really have an explanation for it other than the business that I own right now and our new baby, and we've had a lot going on in our lives behind the scenes. But today, I really wanted to talk with you guys about airports and security and flying with a service dog or flying with an emotional support animal, because there's a lot of little nitty-gritty details that go into flying with an animal, and I'm here to help out with any tips and tricks that I have learned from flying with my service dog and an emotional support animal before I had my service dog. Voodoo is my task-trained service dog, and she goes with me pretty much anywhere that I need her, besides a few places. One of those places is the airport. Airports have a lot of triggers for me, and it tends to be an area where I have a very hard time being, and she helps out a lot in many different ways. Flying with a service dog or an emotional support animal can be incredibly helpful for a lot of different reasons, especially if you suffer from anxiety either in airports or on planes. Now we're going to get into how to prepare for the airport before you actually get there. Step number 1 is training. And this is not necessarily a step, but a lot of different steps within one step, because training takes a lot of time and a lot of work. And there are a few little things that anyone can train any dog to do that will help tremendously in the airport, both for your stress and for your dog's stress. What I like to do before I go through the airport with my service dog is do a little bit of prep training. While Voodoo is a fully trained service dog at this point, I still like to take her to like a Target or a Walmart just to brush up on a little bit of training with specific things that I know we'll have to go through in the airport. One of those things is a really good heel. Healing through an airport is incredibly important for many reasons. The biggest reason being you're in a very crowded place with a lot of different people, and there's a lot of different smells, and it's honestly just a lot more polite to have a well-behaved dog through the airport. Obviously, the standard is expected of service dogs, but even for emotional support animals, it's incredibly important that you have a well-trained and well-behaved dog at the airport, as this helps the reputation of emotional support animals get better, and it helps with the people around you to not get annoyed with the fact that your dog is barking or pulling or lunging or sniffing, etc. Another quick position that I like to train with my dog before we actually go through the airport is coming up in front of me, and I don't really have a specific word or phrase that I use. I just say, come in front of me with this motion. And I'll show a little clip here of us training in Target before actually going through the airport, but this specific position is incredibly important for when you're going through security, because as you, I'm sure, remember, you have to put your stuff in bins and then walk and go through the airport, and it's a huge hassle in general, even without a dog. And especially with a dog, it can be incredibly stressful and crazy panic. I get panicked in security. So it helps a lot to have a dog that just knows exactly where they need to be. They're nice and tucked up in front of you. You're not worried about them sniffing or getting into people's stuff or getting in the way of other people. It's very helpful. Another training regime that I like to go through with my dog is testing going through doorways before we go to the airport. And this is to help mimic what security is going to look like. When you go through security with your dog, they're going to ask your dog to sit and wait before you actually pass through the X-ray. And you want to make sure that your dog actually is good at that and they know how to do that. So that way there isn't confusion. You don't have to do it over and over and over again. It's just a quick, easy process. And the way that I like to train this is we just use the doorway. So I'll practice with Voodoo sitting and staying. I'll do some silly motions where I'm like twisting around, just to kind of get her used to any of that kind of stuff. And usually I don't fly very often, so it really helps to brush up on these little training things before you actually go through the airport. There are a few other small things that you can train your dog if you want to, like how to tuck up in the seat when you're sitting there, depending on if you are able to get bulkhead seating or not. I also really like to train a lot of focus work, like look at me focus type stuff, because that way as you're walking through crowds or if there's a lot of people there, especially people making kissy noises at your dog, that way you know that they're rock solid, and it just helps a lot to brush up on that stuff before you actually go through the airport. All of the training that I just talked about is something that I personally encourage all emotional support animal owners to do as well with their dog, because it can only help. And truthfully, as a service dog handler, I get really stressed when I go into an airport and I see an emotional support animal, only because I have seen so many of them behave poorly. And so if your emotional support animal is trained, to behave well and to work around other dogs and is very, courteous to the other people and dogs around you guys, it helps so much with the whole airport experience. And There are a lot of airlines that are cracking down on emotional support animals simply just because there are so many that are acting out and being bad in airports. And hopefully this kind of encourages you to put more training into your dog, because it will seriously make a world of a difference in your airport journey. Most airlines ask that emotional support animal and psychiatric service dog handlers show proof of rabies, and sometimes they will require a doctor's note depending on the TSA agent that you're talking to. If an agent or a person asks for proof of training of your dog, this is not something that you need to show them. Some airlines will act like it's mandatory, as I've experienced with someone on Delta's airlines over the phone once. She was encouraging me to bring proof of training. And the reason that this is something that you should avoid doing is because there is no valid proof of service dog training. There is no organization that the ADA or the AFDA look at as a legitimate training organization. And so if you do bring in proof of training, it doesn't really mean anything. If you want to, you can always bring in like a CGC certification if your dog has passed that, or any other training thing if you really feel like you want to, just to be safe. That's totally fine. Most airlines will also ask you to call 48 hours before your flight is, just to let them know that there is a dog, and that way the crew can be prepared, the people at the gates can be prepared. It really just helps everyone out a lot. I always call like immediately after I book the ticket, just to make sure I don't forget to call them. And every single time that I've done this, the agents at the gate have always like given me special treatment, let me board first, come and made sure I'm okay. Like it just makes everything so much easier, and it helps the people that you're around know that you're very serious about the dog that you have with you. It's not just like a last minute pet that you're trying to bring on a flight and it's gonna bark and attack people. It really just helps everyone kind of be comfortable with you and the fact that you brought your dog. This is a huge one for me, and I don't know if anybody else gets this too, but I love to dress comfortably through the airport. And comfortably for me is not necessarily like dressing like a homeless person, but I see a lot of people in the airport who dress in like heels and fancy shirts and all that kind of stuff. And I personally love to just wear leggings and a loose baggy shirt, kind of like the one that I'm wearing today. Just anything that makes you feel comfortable. That way you're not stressed and you can kind of focus on you and your dog, getting through the airport, getting to wherever you're needing to go. And I know that it's kind of something like what we wear to the airport is like the last on our list, but I feel like it's one that if I already have my outfit like picked out and ready, it just takes away the stress from the whole trip. This is definitely just a tip and a suggestion for me. This is not something that I think is mandatory, obviously, because if you can't afford this, then I wouldn't recommend doing it. But if you can afford it, or if your airline offers free checked bags, I highly, highly, highly recommend that you do it. It makes the whole trip so much less stressful. You don't have to lug around a whole extra, carry-on bag with you through the airport. You don't have to like try to watch your dog and stick it up in the bins up overhead. When you get on the plane. There's just a lot of reasons that checking your bag can make going to the airport like a billion times easier, less stressful, and just so much better. Now we're gonna get to the fun part, which is actually going through the airport. Once you've done all of this prep work, you're ready to go to the airport, you have your bags packed, your dog's all geared up, you're good to go. When you get to the airport and if you've chosen to check your bag, you go to security. And security is my biggest stress place. I hate security. It freaks me out. I don't know why. I think part of it is I'm always worried that the agents are going to like find something to get mad at me about, or they're going to ask me for paperwork that is imaginary that I don't have. That's like always in the back of my mind. I've never personally had that happen. It's just something that I stress about. It's part of my condition. It's part of what I deal with, and it's just not my favorite. When you go through security with a service dog, I personally don't take the disability line. I know some people do, obviously, if you're in a wheelchair, but for me, I just like to go through the normal line because I'm always worried that I'm going to do something wrong or that someone's going to tell me that I can't go through the disability line. So I just go through the regular line, and once I get up to security, I just hand them my boarding pass and my ID like normal. They scan everything. They're like, okay, you're good to go. What you're going to do then is you're going to grab your stuff, take off your shoes, put them up on the table. That's when I like to ask Voodoo to come in front of me, and she stands right in front of me while I'm going through security. It's like the best thing ever. So then I just shimmy side to side to side until we get to the scanner, and she's backing up with me. And then when we get to the scanner, they have a special scanner that you can walk through with your dog. Once you get to the scanner, the TSA agent will usher you through, and you will have your dog sit and stay. Once your dog is in a sit stay, you walk through the scanner, get to the other side, wait until she says it's clear, and then she says you can call your dog. You say come, the dog comes through, you're good to go. Most of the time, it's been my experience that TSA agents will ask you and or your dog for a pat down, depending on if you set off an alarm or if they set off an alarm or what have you. Sometimes even if you don't set off alarms, they pat you just to be safe. It just really depends on the specific airport's policies. I got pulled aside and was asked if I could have a pat down and if my dog could have a pat down, and I agreed to both because I'm not going to fight TSA on it. I don't care. It's totally fine. So I got a pat down, Voodoo got a pat down, and once that was finished, it only took about 2, maybe 3 minutes, and then we were back on our way to our gate. Then I just walked through the airport with Voodoo like normal. And I personally like to bring a bag of treats with me. Even though Voodoo doesn't normally work eating a ton of treats, I like to bring them to the airport just because it can be a really high stress area. There can be like new sounds, new smells, just different things that we might find that we need treats for to work through. Then once you get to your gate, I personally don't mind having Voodoo laying out in the walkway just a little bit. It depends on how much space you have in your gate. The one that we stayed at in the video is a big gate. There was plenty of room. There weren't a lot of people on the flight, so I wasn't overly concerned with forcing her to, tuck up under my chair or come under my legs. Once the flight's ready to board, you do want to specifically listen for the pre-boarding call. That is specifically for people with service dogs, other handicaps or disabilities that you may need help with when you're getting onto the plane. I wait for the pre-boarding, I go get on. It's much easier if you go on in the pre-boarding because then you and your dog can both get settled before anyone else gets on the plane, and it's so much easier. So once you're boarded onto the plane and your dog is settled, there are a few different things that you can do. I know that there are some handlers that bring chews or treats or toys for their dog during the flight, depending on how long it is. I personally don't do that just because I don't want to disturb the people around me with either the smell or the sound of a dog chewing on something. I just personally find it to be a little bit rude. Takeoff can be a little bit tricky for some dogs because it is really rumbly, you're moving really fast, there's loud sounds. Voodoo tends to kind of adjust because the G-force is like pulling her back. Sometimes she needs to adjust and I allow her to do that. But for the most part during takeoff, she really just lays down, puts her head down, just relaxes through it. It's not a big deal. And same with landing. Once you finally arrive at your destination, there are a lot of airports that have pet relief areas. We just waited and grabbed our checked bag and then left. And the whole experience was awesome because we were really, really well prepared. I had done a lot of training with Voodoo beforehand to make sure that she was ready for this flight. And this flight was her, I believe, 3rd or 4th flight that she's ever done. I hope this video helped a lot of you that are either just about to fly for your first time with a service dog or emotional support animal, or who are flying veterans and are just going to a new airport or a new place and you don't really know what to expect. Flying through an airport in an airplane will always be a different experience every single time, so it's always good to be prepared and to have the right paperwork and to kind of know what to expect when you go through with a dog, because it is very different than going through just as an individual. If you guys have any questions about anything that I either didn't cover in this video or something that you've always wondered about traveling with a service dog through an airport or on an airplane, please leave it in the comments down below and I will try to get back to you as soon as I can, and hopefully it will help you guys have a much more stress-free experience through the airport. I love you guys so much. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time. Bye.